Before May 1707, two states recognised under international law existed on the island of Britain: Scotland in the northern part and England in the south. After May 1707, only one state recognised in international law occupied the whole of the island of Britain. How did that come about? The orthodox view, enshrined in legal texts and political rhetoric, is that in 1707 these two independent states entered into an international agreement, followed by acts of their two parliaments, in terms of which both ceased to exist and were reborn as a new state, the United Kingdom of Great Britain. This narrative of a voluntary mutual union is a powerful one. It was championed by English scholars and jurists like William Blackstone in the 18th century, and constitutional lawyer A.V. Dicey and international lawyer Lord McNair in the 20th century. It is also echoed in the 20th century by Scottish legal scholars, such as Professor David Walker of Glasgow University and Professor Sir T.B. Smith of Edinburgh University. It is the view of the constitutional position that has been expressed by the government of the United Kingdom on numerous occasions over many years, and it is a view accepted by the devolved government of Scotland in Edinburgh. In 2022, the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom was called upon to decide whether the devolved Scottish Parliament had the authority to pass legislation providing for a referendum to be held on the issue of independence for Scotland. In her submissions to the court, the Lord Advocate, the chief law officer of the devolved administration, stated the kingdoms of Scotland ceased to exist in 1707. These states no longer exist, having been replaced by the United Kingdom. This explanation of what happened in 1707 is false. Its falsity can be demonstrated by considering the institutions of government, executive, legislative and judicial, in Scotland and England before and after the supposed creation of this new state. The events of 1707 certainly resulted in Scotland's executive government and its legislature ceasing to exist. But was there any parallel in England? Were the governmental institutions of both nations replaced by the institutions of a new state? The answer to these questions is no. England's institutions of government continued in being, completely unchanged, save for their authority being now extended to encompass Scotland. Let's look at the executive government. The events of 1707 undoubtedly resulted in Scotland's national government ceasing to exist. The executive branch of government in Scotland, including but not limited to the Privy Council, was superseded by the existing executive structure pertaining in England, including its Privy Council, with the addition of a Secretary of State for Scotland, an office, however, that was abolished in 1746. Scotland thereafter being managed by the Lord Advocate until 1827, and then by the Home Office in London until the office of Secretary for Scotland was created in 1885 and upgraded to Secretary of State for Scotland in 1926. The institutions of executive government in England changed and not at all after and in consequence of the events of 1707. For England, nothing changed. One of the functions of the executive branch of government is the conclusion of treaties with foreign states. Prior to 1707, both Scotland and England did this. None of Scotland's pre-1707 treaties, including with France, with the Pope, and with various Scandinavian states, was regarded by the new regime and by legal scholars as still valid and binding after 1st of May 1707. By contrast, England's pre-1707 treaties were regarded by the new regime and by legal scholars as continuing in full force and effect, notwithstanding the supposed creation of the new United Kingdom of Great Britain. And England's diplomatic representation in Europe continued uninterrupted. Fresh credentials on behalf of the monarch of the supposed new state of Great Britain were not presented to, nor indeed expected by, the foreign states to which the diplomatic representatives had been accredited. For England, nothing changed. A very telling symbol of this continuity of England is the title adopted by the late Queen, as proclaimed with the advice of the UK government on her accession to the throne in 1952. That title was Elizabeth II, notwithstanding the fact that the first Elizabeth, Elizabeth Tudor, reigned over England alone. Had a new state replacing England come into existence in 1707, the late Queen would have been the first monarch with the name of Elizabeth to be its head of state. The use of the second is a quiet but profound admission that the English monarchy, and by extension the English state, continued unbroken. And I may say this was not the first occasion on which that occurred. In the 20th century, there were two kings with the name Edward. One was Edward VII, and one was Edward VIII. Now, before 1707, there had been 6 kings of the name of Edward in England. But after 1707, there were no Edwards until the 2 in the 20th century appeared. If a new state had been created in 1707, Edward VII would have been Edward I, and Edward VIII would have been Edward II.